Okay, we're back. We're live. It's a Monday, and we have another show to a far point of the world. Just now, we finished talking with a young man by the name of Russell Kekoa Kohler, who is a Hawaii boy who has been studying and teaching in Istanbul. And that was a really interesting discussion with him, and it worked out well. Skype to the rescue. Now, a world away, the other side of the globe. We talked to Marco Mangelsdorf and our regular Marco and me, sometimes Mina Marco and me, about energy on Monday at noon, wherever Marco is. Thank you for joining us from Beijing, Marco.
Well, Xiaoshan Hao, and a little small correction, my dear friend Jay, I'm actually in the East China Sea, next to the East China Sea city megalopolis of Shanghai.
Okay, well, there's more stuff in Shanghai. Beijing is a government city. Shanghai is a business city. You probably have good reason to be in Shanghai, no?
I always have a good reason to be in Shanghai. I attended and presented at an energy conference last week in the city of Xi'an, which is in Shanxi province, kind of on the way to Lhasa, Tibet, where there is the incredible archaeological find of about back in 1974, 41 years ago, the terracotta warriors hidden in underground caverns that they'd been hidden for over 2,000 years until a farmer happened to come across some broken pottery, essentially, and that led to this, one of the most incredible archaeological finds of the 20th century.
It's huge. And I think they've done a good job in presenting it, historically. It's got a roof on it. It's all dug around the individual pottery soldiers. There are thousands of them. It's an extraordinary thing to see. It must be acres and acres of soldiers there. And you can spend the whole day walking around and enjoying all the, all the historical implications of it.
Well, they've excavated 3 pits so far, Jay, what they call pits, and it's estimated that there are 100 times that still yet to be discovered, yet to be excavated, as in 300 pits. So it just boggles the mind. And just, a little bit of a brief history. This one particular emperor, long ago, he wanted to be well accompanied, so to speak, in the afterlife, and he had a workforce of, get this now, 700,000 people, artisans and workers and excavators, 700,000 people who worked for decades to build these thousands upon thousands of terracotta warriors and horses and chariots and archers. I mean, it was truly mind-boggling, the extent to which rich, powerful people in antiquity went to incredible lengths to try to guarantee prosperity in the afterlife. And of course, not just Chinese who did that, but also, you can look at the Egyptians too, who went to great lengths to do similar things. I'm no archaeologist or master historian, but it's just quite stunning.
Was there energy to study in Xi'an?
Was there, I'm sorry?
Energy?
Is there energy to study? Well, there is an energy conference there that dealt with, energies across the board, from renewables to coal and nuclear. So I kind of enjoy going to these gatherings from time to time and hear what other people have to say on stuff that I know a little bit about, but don't know, quite as much as I'd like to know about. So this
was an international crowd that came to Xi'an for a discussion of renewables. Wow. Mm-hmm. What about Beijing? The picture we have of you right now is in front of the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, and I wonder, did you go inside? Was there a conference there also?
No, I haven't. I haven't risen to that level of, shall I say, notoriety yet to be able to get into the Great Hall yet and be invited by. Typically, it's members of the Parliament, the National People's Congress, or other party gatherings, and I haven't got my ticket punched yet.
I hope this doesn't bother you, but I've been inside. I was inside with the Linda Lingle delegation in 2004, and it is a spectacular building. And
Well, if I were in front of you, Jay, I would bow very obsequiously and deeply in your presence.
thank you very much. So tell us, what is the status of clean energy, of renewables in China now? They're certainly interested. They've been increasingly interested, well, since 2004 anyway. What is it like now? Are they getting away from coal?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But are they getting away from coal fast enough to make much of a difference in terms of air quality? I'd say the definitive answer to that is no, not yet. I mean, as one approaches the Pudong airport from the usual landing pattern, you can see these monstrous wind turbines, probably somewhere in the 300-400 feet, 100-meter height, that dot the area right close to the East China Sea, and you can see these big turbines similar in size and scope to the ones you see at Ma'alaya, close to Ma'alaya Harbor on the island of Maui. So the push towards renewable energy in China is still going very, very strong. But as I think I've mentioned to you on another occasion or two, perhaps years ago, is they've got a problem sometimes that they're similar to what we have in Hawaii. They have too much renewable energy too far away from population centers, and the infrastructure available and the grid operators' willingness to transport this power great distances and provide it to people who use it is limited. So there are substantial percentages of this renewable energy that is generated that just goes nowhere. So it's great to see all this power being developed. And in fact, I should send you a map and we can show it to the viewers for our next talk. Is looking at the map of China, you see where the most renewable energy resources are installed, and they are great distances from the major population centers. So that is a real and substantive problem here.
Now, if I were the Chinese, of course, interested in renewables, I would be developing technology, black boxes, if you will, inverters, high-tech solar cells, you name it. I'd be putting a lot of resources on that because they can. And have you seen any indication of that? Have you seen any new technology that blows your socks off?
No, I wouldn't say new technologies per se. There continue to be developments, I mean, obviously in terms of photovoltaics, of tweaking the efficiency higher, bringing the cost lower. More than 65+% of all photovoltaic modules made on the planet are made in China, and a lot of those go to feed the domestic market. But in terms of dramatic breakthroughs, I mean, I see this field, and I've been in it now for 37 years, I see it as more incremental and evolutionary rather than revolutionary, despite all the sales spin and hype that one hears sometimes about this or that new technology leading to benefits beyond our wildest dreams.
We talked about this some time ago, too, the American tariff situation. What is that like these days, vis-a-vis the panels made in China?
Well, thanks to principally Solar World based in Germany, the company's been very aggressive in going and lodging complaints in both the United States and Europe against Chinese manufacturers. It has become more difficult for the Chinese module manufacturers and producers to distribute in the United States over the past couple years. And if you look at the numbers, the percentage of modules going in the U.S. market that are Chinese have come down substantially over the past 2 years because the tariffs have been successful in doing what Solar World wanted to have done, which is to try to limit the distribution of Chinese modules in the markets where they're competing.
Too bad. Xi Jinping is here, or he's about to be here. I think he is here. And I guess that raises the question of how popular or not popular he is. Some people whose names will go unmentioned don't feel he's very popular at all. right now, and that he is too tough on corruption, too tough, and maybe not equitable on corruption issues, and that he is actually taking the country backward. I wonder what the general consensus, as far as you see, is concerned, and whether he is supporting moves forward.
Oh, that's a huge question. And yes, you're right. He has been enjoying, he and his wife Peng Liyuan have been enjoying a state visit, one of a relatively few state visits by a foreign leader under Barack Obama. State visit this past week in Washington, and he and his wife have been getting a lot of very voluminous and favorable press coverage over here. And he's the fifth generation of Chinese leaders post-revolution, Mao Zedong obviously being the first. And there are kind of two countervailing trends that I see, or phenomena. One is that with each successive leadership, and again, he's the fifth generation, from 2 to 3 to 3 to 4 to 4 to 5, there has been effectively a diminution of power and authority within the top leadership of the party and the party leader himself, which is Xi Jinping. He's both the General Secretary of the Communist Party and also President. Because there are more actors, because there are more, there's a greater diffusion of power now than there was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 20, 30 years ago. So in that sense, since there are more actors on the stage, both in an economic sense, in a political sense, in a bureaucratic sense, and a ministerial sense, you can make the case that the Communist Party leader and the president has actually lost some absolute power because others have gained more power. And then the countervailing trend under this president, since Xi came to power in late 2012, people have remarked that he has done a rather remarkable job in consolidating his own power and the power of those immediate around him more so than his predecessors. So people have been thinking of him as one of the most powerful, one of the more powerful Chinese leaders in a generation or so. So what to make of this? It's a lot of it is reading the tea leaves, but he. What I can say pretty much unequivocally is that he has a tremendous amount of support, amongst the people here. And that was, I think, largely because he's seen as someone who is putting a lot of effort and energy rhetorically and substantively into what's called the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, and that's one of his principal themes. This is very nationalist, a very pro-nationalist ideology and message. And he is also being seen as very, very tough on corruption, more so than his predecessors. And there are some really big-name people who have been taken down here in China over the past several years, possible rivals to Xi Jinping, as well as the previous Politburo, the all-powerful security chief Zhou Yongkang, who was one of the biggest people taken down in decades here in terms of corruption. So it's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but I mean, we could spend hours and hours talking about the situation over here in terms of the politics.
Okay, well, right now we're going to take a break. I think it's a good time for it. That's Marco Mangelsdorf. He joins me by Skype audio from Shanghai. He's the president of Provision Solar. And this is Mina, Marco, and me, except Mina isn't with us today. We'll be right back after this 1 minute to discuss further what Marco is learning in China, not only about China, but Hawaii. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen. I host Likeable Science on ThinkTech Hawaii. And I do this because I care about science literacy in Hawaii. I want to spread the understanding that science is a vital and interesting part of everyone's life. I want to make sure the broadest possible spectrum of people understand the beauty and the value of science and realize that science plays out each and every day of their lives. I want you to understand that science is fun. So we bring onto this show each week guests who are scientists, from astronomers to zoologists, and we talk about what they do and how they do it. But most importantly, we talk about why you should care about their work, why you should see that their work has value and impact on your life. So I hope you'll join us Fridays, 1 p.m. here on ThinkTech Hawaii. You can watch us via live stream. You can watch us recorded on Olelo, and you can see us each week. We hope you'll join us.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're in. Now, this picture is Marco Mangelsdorf in Beijing again at Tiananmen Square. And you were there recently, so I guess you took this picture there. And I guess my question, Marco, is did you feel the secret police around you? Did you feel threatened in any way by being in Tiananmen Square?
No. I mean, obviously Tiananmen can be kind of loaded based on the events that happened there back in June of 1989. But I mean, it is a huge tourist attraction. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, public squares on the planet. From what I understand, it can be seen from space. Well, I mean, I guess now that doesn't mean a whole lot because you've got Google Earth and you can practically read a newspaper from high altitude. Back in the day before Google Earth, I mean, satellites were, more spycraft stuff. There's no doubt plenty of security in that area, but most of it is plain clothes, although there's a fair amount of uniformed security as well. So
yeah.
It's a peaceful place to be.
Yeah. And just to the left of your face in the picture is this huge, you can't tell how big it is in the photo, this huge picture of Mao Zedong. There he is, smiling all over Tiananmen Square. And to your left would be the what do you call it, the palace, the temple, right?
Yes. And what's interesting is you can actually go to their websites out there where you can see the evolution of the Mao Zedong photo over the years. It has that smiling face of his, that particular copy or that image, that particular photo hasn't, or painting, whatever the case may be, hasn't been there since October 49. It has gone through an evolution of a number of different images of Mao, so it's kind of interesting to see the evolution, and maybe I can get that to you for our next show, see the evolution of how he has looked gazing at his people over the years, different images.
Right. And just now, the Forbidden City is just here. If you turn, in this photo, if you turn to the left, you'll be looking right into the Forbidden City, right?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, so coming back to Hawaii for a minute. So there have been events here, and I guess one thing was the newspaper article in yesterday, Sunday's newspaper, on solar and net energy metering and how that's doing in terms of the sales of solar in the face of a possible end of net energy metering. Can you talk about that?
Sure, be happy to. You're referring to Katie Mickleseth's piece yesterday in the Advertiser, which I've read as well. And essentially, since Hawaiian Electric announced way back in January that it was their desire and intention to bring net energy metering to a close and replace it with a new tariff, a new interconnect agreement. They, to take back for a moment, back in January, they requested to the PUC that the PUC decide on this within 60 days, which would have taken it to March 20th, which of course happened 6 months ago, because the PUC decided that they weren't going to abide by that request, and it's taken considerably longer. And this is all part of the Distributed Energy Resources docket, which is sitting on the commissioner's desk waiting for resolution, as well as other important dockets. And
which you and I talked about in the Asia Pacific Clean Energy Summit about a month ago, where I think we all agreed it was the most important thing going forward, because it was the pathway to to 100% renewables. On the other hand, I haven't heard much since, and this is an important discussion then in the newspaper.
Yeah, so essentially, over these past months, there has been a greater sense of urgency, which has been played into and hyped by people in my business in order to nail down sales, in order to generate sales, where homeowners and business owners have been provided the message that net energy metering is on the way out, and if you don't go for it now, if you don't go for a PV system now, you're going to be unhappy in the future when you had your chance and you blew it. So it has led to almost kind of the worst of all worlds for Hawaiian Electric, in that here they're trying to ramp them down to move towards the new, in my opinion, more fair and equitable interconnect agreement. And over the past 8 months, it has led to a huge spike in the number of people wanting to go NEM. So they've got exactly what they didn't want. They're trying to ramp the program down, and they've been straining. They've been straining with the volume of net energy metered applications from very, very busy and very sometimes very aggressive salespeople who are just trying to close sales right and left.
Yeah, and would these sales right now be subject to the grandfather provision that Hawaiian Electric had talked about?
Well, that ultimately that remains to be seen, pending the decision order from the Commission on the DER docket. But Hawaiian Electric has been very consistent, from my recollection, very consistent that any change to NEM, going from NEM to NEM 2, NEM 2.0, or post-NEM, those existing NEM customers, number one, and those customers, homeowners who have already applied for the NEM program, they will most likely be able to be grandfathered into the NEM program.
Yeah, well, so that makes further difficulty on it. Meanwhile, we have the NextEra deal, which somehow affects everything. You know, it's been my view, and I think it's well held, that while the NextEra approval is pending, nothing else can happen. It's all kind of dampened. It's all kind of under the shadow of the approval process. And so we really need to get that done one way or the other before we can move ahead on so many other things. What are your thoughts?
I think that the Commission can walk and chew gum at the same time, and I think Randy Iwase, the Commission chair, in an interview he did with Katie Mickelstuff, the advertiser, several weeks ago, I think he made that point very clear in the interview he did, that, look, we're not just, we can do multiple things at once here, and that as he did that, he was kind of rummaging around his desk, if I remember correctly, and picked up a binder, and then underneath the binder there was a stack of papers that were about 1 inch thick, and he thought maybe he was picking up something that was merger related. He said, oh, no, this is the DER docket. Oh, we're working on this. We should have something soon. So that, of course, got people in my business very curious about, I'm wondering what's in that stack of papers. So I do believe that they can do multiple things at once, and they just can't allow themselves to be paralyzed month after month after month by dealing with granted the most important docket, which is the merger docket. I mean, they have to be able to do other things as well, which I believe that they're doing.
Yeah, well, they should do other things as well. They have to do other things as well. And they have to say they're going to do other things, and they can walk and chew gum at the same time. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Because right now, what's the date of the date that everyone expects them to rule on the NextEra deal?
Well, he kind of hedged a bit, in my opinion, when he did his interview with Katie, because he was largely quoted in the previous months as, we're shooting for June, and he essentially said, and again, I don't have the transcript in front of me, Randy Iwase said, well, we're not committed to that. That's not the deadline. We'll take as much time as we need. That was the message that I got, that don't get too stuck on this June 2016, because it's not a deadline. We're going to take as much time as we need to do this right, given the import of what we're doing.
I saw that too, and it crossed my mind that maybe he was saying we might do it earlier. What do you think?
I think not.
Hawaii, the state of process.
yes.
We have process and process and process. Nobody knows when the process ends. But it would be wonderful. Randy, you hear us? It'd be wonderful if he ruled earlier, if the commission ruled earlier, because then we could get the burden of this case off and in my view, sail ahead on lots of other things. So,
well, the next proximate date that I have my eyes on, Jay, is that a little more than a week from now, October 7th, there's the deadline for all the interveners and the consumer advocate to file their rebuttals to the voluminous 1,000-plus pages of NextEra and HEI rebuttals, which they filed on August 31st. So within a week or so, we will know what DBED, the Office of State Planning, another state agency, and the consumer advocate, we will know where they fall on the new offer, the putative new offer, the sweetened pot from NextEra. So when Governor Ige was speaking, I think, before Japanese Chamber of Commerce this past week, and he was asked, and Luis from DBED, his DBED head, was asked, well, what's going on with the merger? And they were both rather coy about it. Say, we're still studying, we're still thinking about it, still, we still have work to do. But I will go out on a limb and predict that within a week or so, we will definitely know a lot more as to whether the three state entities, Jeff Ono, Consumer Advocate, DBED, and Office of State Planning, whether they are still maintaining their opposition to the deal based on reviewing the 1,000-plus pages of testimony from NextEra and HEI. And then I predict as well that after that happens, or concurrently, the governor will likely opine as well as to whether he believes or his mind has been changed from his previous announced opposition. So I think there are going to be some substantial developments within the next week. And HIEC, Hawaii Island Energy Co-op, will also be submitting our rebuttal testimony over the next week as well.
yeah, I saw that, and my reaction to David Ige's and Luis Salavaria's DBED comments at the Japanese Chamber of Commerce last Wednesday were that actually the governor was backing off. I think the net effect of those comments was that his original statement that he opposed the deal was he opposed the deal as proposed at that time. Okay, and it's consistent with the discussion you and I had, I believe, and namely that, well, this is just a big negotiation anyway, and that was maybe intended to get NextEra to sweeten the deal. So now NextEra has come up with various points that sweeten the deal. We should actually have a detailed discussion of that one day. Okay, and now the deal's not the way it was. So the statements at the Japanese Chamber of Commerce suggest that, well, maybe he doesn't oppose it because it's different than it was. His opposition was based on the circumstances at the time he announced it. Now he's not sure he opposes it at all. So I mean, I think it undermined or changes, the way his public perception on this, his public position on it. And I think what's going to happen now is what we all anticipated, that there would be a negotiation. And these statements are all in aid of a great big public negotiation. It's too bad they got to have it public this way. Honestly, I think deals are better made, in the privacy of, a personal meeting, a personal negotiating meeting. But I guess these days it's transparent, so you get to see every stroke in public. And after NextEra's recent stroke, there'll be other strokes, and we'll all see it, and we'll all have commentary. Marco, there was something in the paper also about Uluponu, that it was going to establish, or it had established, a website
right,
giving you a matrix of who was proposing what, because it's not just one variable, it's many variables. I think it would be useful to see what Ulupono comes up with on this. We will see who's proposing what, and we will all be able to weigh in on this variable or that variable. And at the end of the day, we'll all have a better understanding of what is exactly on the table. You know, they should have done that in the Iran nuclear agreement. That would have been helpful if the world could have seen all the terms as they were evolving. But we here in Hawaii will see all the terms as they are evolving, and I think that's probably a healthy prospect.
Well, and to go back to your characterization of the governors talking before the Chamber of Commerce, I take a little bit different view, which is that he doesn't want to, and this wouldn't make sense for him, to get ahead of his own agencies. So his agencies, they said, well, Jeff Ono, I mean, it's not his agency, so to speak, but DBED and OSP are under his administration, and it would be imprudent for him to pronounce really anything substantively other than we're still thinking about it before his agencies respond to the rebuttal, to the applicants' rebuttal testimonies of August 31st, which I said previously earlier.
But Marco, he already did that. He already did get ahead of his own agency. He came out without any reference to DBED or any other agency in the state. He said he opposed the deal. And query, if you say that it would be imprudent to do that, he's already done it.
Well, perhaps, granted, Jay, your point is well taken. Perhaps he is trying to do things a little bit differently for this go-around and not get ahead of his own agencies. And he only has, like I said, about a week or so to wait. And then once his agencies pronounce and rebut the applicant's rebuttal testimony several weeks ago, then it will be much easier for him to go out and speak more candidly as to whether he feels that this sweetened offer has been sufficient to get him to essentially change his previously stated position.
Yeah, I think inherent in this deal, the Japanese Chamber of Commerce, what happened there was that he was saying, you know, I really shouldn't have come out without my agency joining me or speaking for me. You know, I shouldn't be pulling the rug on my own administration. I think what he was also saying is that from now on, he was going to be more respectful of his agency, and he wasn't going to come out with these, these special flyby type statements. And I don't think we're going to see him in his own right coming up with statements like he came up before. I think he's kind of changed his view of that to a better view, to allowing his agency to make the statements. Maybe the same statements, but it's his agency that should do it, not him. Well, so I'll bet you $5 that we have a different approach going forward.
Well, I have a rather dramatic counterpoint to that, Jay, which you know very well, which is just several weeks ago, you and I attended the Asia-Pacific Energy Summit in Honolulu, where that Monday, Governor David Ige went before the assembled and blew everybody out of the water, including DBED, that he was turning the boat back regarding LNG.
I remember it well. It was remarkable, and it was just like the thing about NextEra. But what happened at APCES when he took a position to oppose LNG, that's a few weeks ago. What happened with the Chamber of Commerce was only last Wednesday. I think we are seeing a change in his approach. And we will know this. You and I will be able to comment on this in our next discussion, Marco. We'll see what he's doing.
Well, as I said, I really think the next week could be fairly dramatic in terms of news, because the rebuttal testimony from the applicants, NextEra and HEI, on the 31st of August, they were quite, shall I say, energetic in going after a number of the interveners, including DBED, including OSP, including the consumer advocate. So I expect a full-throated, very detailed, most likely strongly pushing back rebuttal to their rebuttal to the applicant's rebuttal. I know we're getting lots of rebuttals here. And at the risk of further confounding the rebuttals, Jay, then by the 14th of October, 1 week after the 7th, obviously, HEI and Xterra can file SIR rebuttals, S-U-R, SIR rebuttals to our rebuttals, which were rebuttals to their rebuttals.
We know how to do process here in Hawaii. Well, but one thing I want to ask you before we close, and that is this. You know, we've had the Hawaii Island Energy Co-op, which has had a lot of press and a lot of support actually over the past few months, relative to what you might expect, because it's a whole new idea, maybe a divergent idea, and an idea outside the true channel of this docket. And we've had the mayor of Maui talking about municipal energy production, municipal utilities. Is there any real possibility that the PUC is going to wrap around those possibilities in its determination of this docket? Or is that just going to be for another time? Honestly, from what we've seen so far, from their statements, from Randy Iwasa's statements so far, is it going to be bundled in, or is it going to be put off to another time?
Well, that's the $64,000, now with inflation, probably more like $64 million or $640 million question, Jay. And the one example that is clear and unequivocal is when Paniolo Power, which used to be one of the interveners to the merger docket, Dutch Kuipers Group and Parker Ranch, when Paniolo Power formally asked the commission to blend the DER docket with the Power Supply Improvement Plan, or PSIP docket, the commission issued a response saying, no, ain't going to do that. You know, we got to stay focused on the question at hand, which is the so-called change of control. So that's really the only one example that we have. And whether they go down the path of considering alternatives, whether it's co-ops or munis or something such as what Chris Lee, or Representative Chris Lee, has been talking about, really remains to be seen. And it's still too early in the game to get definitive determination from the three commissioners, and understandably so, not slow, although maybe kind of slow as well. So we're waiting to see. I mean, certainly it's been our position, HIC's position, that we believe that consideration of alternatives should be a matter of discussion, given the import of this particular issue and the once-in-a-lifetime occasion of change of control, one of the oldest, most vulnerable companies in the state. So yet to be determined whether they allow going in that direction or not.
It's a very interesting moment in that regard, and it's hard to see how they could wrap it together, but you're right, it remains a logical possibility. On the other hand, Randy Iwasa been around a long time. He knows how to focus. He knows how regulatory bodies, move, and how focus may affect their decisions. So this will be interesting, and next time we speak, we'll be able to follow up on that. So I think it's interesting too that when you speak from China, you have a slightly different perception. Somehow I feel it's different when you're talking from a few thousand miles away, Marco.
Well, maybe I'm going native, Jay. I mean, my Chinese certainly is still very, very rudimentary, but perhaps I'm just touching back to my past life roots of being a prince or a pauper here in this incredible country and culture.
Well, enjoy the trip. I assume you'll be back in 2 weeks from now, and we can regroup on all these issues then. Thank you so much, Marco Mangelsdorf, President of Provision Solar, and who joins us every 2 weeks by Skype, usually by Skype, on a show we call Mina, Marco, and Me. This is only Marco and me right now. Thank you, Marco.
Hey, fantastic to be with you, and a warm Zaijian to you on this Monday afternoon Hawaii time and Tuesday morning here in China.
Xie xie, Zaijian. Talk
Bye-bye.
soon. Aloha.